Is that Snoopy?
Yes, he's barking.
Snoopy, I like that name.
Yeah, till he starts barking, then you don't like it.
Okay, you may go ahead.
Okay, welcome everybody to our Heritage Barrie meeting on this beautiful June day. And I'm going to be chairing the meeting tonight. And I guess we can start going right away with 2.1, which is our committee budget update. Our budget right now is $23,600. So we've got our amount. Really, we haven't used it yet, but hopefully we can start using it tonight. That's the plan. So that's our budget. And to do with our budget, a suggestion actually by Kathy was the idea of supporting the Native Friendship organization and in sort of understanding what's happened in the last little while. And so I thought that would probably go under the committee budget update. And I guess the big thing is if everyone can agree that we will support that. And the other thing is that we'd like to probably figure out how, who we send it to, how we do that. So if anyone has any opinions about that. Go ahead, Councillor Harris.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, absolutely wonderful idea. I was wondering, I was curious, do we know if our Indigenous community is planning to do or recommend a memorial for the residential schools? That would be something we could certainly focus our efforts towards, but bearing that, I think the idea of making contribution is a good one. So I support whichever direction that we take. Thank you.
Thank you. Kaylee?
Yeah, I've sort of been thinking about it since Kathy suggested it, and I was trying to make sure that it also fit our mandate, because we don't necessarily always give to causes, and there might be other people that want funding for stuff, so we have to think about that and how doing this donation may affect other stuff down the line. I also wondered if, instead of a straight donation where you're not exactly sure where all the funds go, it might be more meaningful if there was anybody associated with the Friendship Center, or family that live here now that had kids that went to residential schools, if sort of a plaque memorial rather than just cash was given.
Okay.
Yes, Sarah.
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines of, does it fit with our mandate, and does it open some interesting doors that we might have to deal with later? And I definitely agree that something perhaps a bit more tangible, like it is really good to be aware of the causes and support where we can. The investigation is ongoing out there, so we don't necessarily know the whole picture at this point. So they may have some more information come that would provide us a bit of a direction. So I was just wondering if we hold off a little bit till we get a little bit more information and perhaps see how we can impact our community in a good way that also supports our mandate, because it is public funds and all that sort of stuff. So that's just what I was thinking.
I was just going to say, a big piece of ours, Heritage Barrie, is about education. And obviously, I think this would fit the mandate. And so the idea, like a plaque, those sorts of things, is tangible, but it's also about education. So I agree that would be a worthwhile thing that we could definitely support. So I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kathy?
And and for those who might not know, our local church actually here, Burton United, just this past Sunday or Saturday, I can't even remember which day now, they actually did a healing ceremony So the church reached out to the Barrie Native Friendship Center to say, we would like to do something in recognition. We don't know what that should look like. We would like you to give us direction and guidance, please, which is the way that they do that. And so they talked about, like, you know, doing a healing ceremony, the sacred fire ceremony, which is what they did at the church on Saturday. They also rang our church bells 215 times in recognition of the children. We do have people in our neighborhoods and in our families that were a part of the residential school system. So that's, you know, and part of it is, I also noted that another local connection in Barrie, the Scottish, I think it's a group called the Scottish Connection, you know, sent them, like, because I follow their Facebook page just to see what they're up to. They had sent them, you know, flowers and a card. So, you know, if we're struggling and we want to do something more tangible, when we understand a little better, we could do that. But at the very least, then I would like to consider, you know, if we're thinking that's, you know, because that is a good idea, something maybe more tangible by way of a plaque or but, you know, and reaching out to them and saying, what could we do? But I still would really like to send something on behalf of our committee, even if it's just flowers and a card.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say? Councillor Harris?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Kathy, for putting this on the table, I think, first and foremost. I do like the idea that both Kaylee and Sarah had mentioned about doing something tangible, but I do like the approach. I think the right approach is to ask the Friendship Center what they would like. And Heritage Barrie, as part of mandate, you mentioned, well, Craig, is education. So would a motion to have a member of the committee reach out to the Friendship Center to ask how we could honor the residential schools, and then we can go from there. Is that fair?
I think that's a great idea. So
Would it be?
Kathy?
And I'm wondering if it not necessarily, would this actually, Thomas, maybe you might know better, would this maybe fall under the realm of the cult, like our culture, like Stephanie or Amanda Dyke, to reach out if we wanted to do something, you know, just to say that, I mean, they could reach out on behalf of Heritage Barrie, or should we be doing it?
Kathy, through the chair, I would suggest that just a member of this committee reach out. I mean, it's our funds. We can dispose of those how we wish. So,
Okay.
yeah, that'd be my recommendation.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think that's probably just one of us reaching out. Yes, Kaylee. Sorry, Sarah.
Okay. Perhaps the center has some good literature that they like to disperse. And since we are going to be doing lots of table displays that are going to have our literature, would we reach out to them and as part of that say, do you have anything that you'd like to provide us with that we can then provide the community? And we could perhaps, if they need some more printed, that would be a tangible way to offer some support. Maybe that's something they would be interested in.
Excellent. That's a great suggestion. Does anyone else have anything? Yeah, David?
Yes, I agree. That might be very appropriate, in that we'll be at open air, I think, when we get to that a bit later. And anything would be welcome there. I think we should see it both as a short-term response and a longer-term response. And a longer-term response, there's some neat things we could do there to help recognize, you know, this story. And perhaps if when we approach them, we can word that in such a way, an appropriately worded letter or response, and express our feelings at this time, and then ask, is there anything in the short term, and that we intend to hopefully involve you in the long term as well. Yep, thank you.
Excellent. And I think Shelley had her hand up.
Thanks, Chair. That's really the point I was going to make, that I think it's a short term and long term. And if we ask them, because it was like, well, do they want a plaque, or where would even a plaque go and what would be on it? So that's a little bit more involved, and they may not suggest that a plaque is what they would recommend. So there may be something else. So short term, great. Let's, if the motion is there that Kathy talks to them and asks them if what they need, and if they also have literature. So then we kill kind of both of them at the same time, and then we can move on to long term.
Excellent. Good. Anyone else? So I guess to summarize, if Kathy, if you wouldn't mind approaching them and asking them from the committee what their suggestions are. I think the idea of the literature is a great idea, since we're going to be downtown, if they're interested in that. And then the idea of, is there anything that we can do right now? And then maybe some ideas of things that we can do later, maybe in the education area. I think that'd be awesome. Thank you. Okay, excellent. Well, thank you for bringing that up. I think that was great. Okay, so we are on 2.2. Status of Municipal Heritage Register. So that's the Simcoe County Jail, and I think this is probably Thomas.
Thanks very much, Craig. Yes. So there's two sort of interrelated things. Simcoe County Jail. I actually did have been corresponding with the province / Infrastructure Ontario about this property, and it is a provincially recognized property as a heritage property. However, the Infrastructure Ontario staff are supportive of also recognizing it through a municipal designation. So there's actually two properties that we are in the process of designating. One would be the 125, 127 Dunlop Street East, and then Simcoe County Gall. My question or recommendation to the committee is for me to be able to actually look for a consultant to help me prepare the statement of cultural heritage value, so that it can be published as part of a notice of intent to designate. I also have been in correspondence with somebody who works locally in preparing these documents, and it's around $2,500 to do that work per building. So the committee would need to spend around $5,000 to have that work prepared for each building. And I would request that the committee approve the expenditure of those funds today.
So I was just looking at the budget, and we have money set aside for that. So we'd be able to cover that, just to let everyone know. So Deb, do you have something you wanted to say? Deborah, can you hear me? Did you had your hand up or no? Oh, you're okay.
Oh, that's up, yeah.
Okay. Oh, good.
Let's just vote.
All right.
Put a motion forward and vote. Is that what we do?
I'd love to put a motion forward to do that. So does anyone want to second that?
I'll second it.
Agree? Okay. Do we all agree?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Excellent. Very good. So there you go. Thank you very much. That was good. Excellent. So 2 designation. Awesome. All right. So that's done. Okay. 2.4 proposed boundary to East End Historic Neighborhood. Sarah has her hand up.
Sorry, I just had a slight question from the previous one.
Oh, okay.
Do we know the status of whether or not the church has been added? I know that it was going through the multitude of committees, but do we know at what point it is?
That's a good question, Sarah. I don't know where it is in terms of the approvals process, because it has to receive 3 approvals. But it is, I mean, we did pass a motion, so it is on that list. Actually, let me, 1 second, Sarah, please. I have a motion here, and I don't recall if it's on that motion or not.
Yeah, Tammy has her hand up, so maybe she's going to answer something.
Oh,
Go
right.
ahead, Tammy.
That recommendation is going to the city building committee next week, so on the 15th.
There you go.
Okay. So
That's great. That's awesome. Our second.
So stay tuned.
yeah.
Second church. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So Thomas, did you have anything else that you want to say there, or
I did, and I just recognized that Kathy had her hand up, but I don't want to.
Okay, so go ahead, Kathy.
I was just going to also mention that when I was at the service on Saturday or Sunday, the Andrea Wheaton from Burton United also mentioned that they are going to list the church as well. They just need to get the paperwork done. And I thought, it's because of the pandemic, they're slowed down a little bit, but I think maybe even just seeing my face made her realize that they got to get it done. So hopefully that comes soon. But I was wondering, Thomas, is it possible if I give you her contact information, could you send her, the letter that we send out to just say we'd love it if you would list your property?
I can do that, Kathy.
Just as a reminder.
Please, in your email, just outline what you'd like me to do, and I will do that.
Yeah. Okay.
That's great. This is awesome. So this is one of the things we're really working on, a work plan, is to get the churches. So this is fantastic. Excellent. Did anyone else have anything that they wanted to say about that? Thomas?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is just under item 2.3 development applications under review. And this is just not sure how to describe it, but there has been a number of applications that are going before the Committee of Adjustment that I have provided comment on that haven't been able to get to committee just because of the timing. But if a committee watches, or if members of this committee watch Committee of Adjustment, you'll probably see that we're looking for some work on Committee of Adjustment applications. But there has been no notice of public meeting on an application that I have to bring forward. There's been numerous things that have gone to neighborhood meeting, but until it reaches, of course, the point of a complete application, then I don't bring those matters to committee. So just clarifying for the committee, if you're wondering if things are out in the world on different websites and whatnot, unless it's been deemed complete under the Planning Act, it doesn't make its way to the committee just yet.
Okay, excellent. Very good. Thank you very much. So I'm sorry, does anyone else have anything about that? Okay, sorry. 2.4, proposed boundary to the East End Historic Neighborhood. I presume that's Thomas.
That is me again. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
This is something that was brought up at our open house, and I believe also referenced at the public meeting for the official plan. And it may be something we could discuss or wrap together as part of the official plan review. So I'll give the committee the decision on that, of course. But we have in our draft official plan proposed boundary for the East End neighborhood. And there has been some debate in the public about the accuracy of that boundary. Now I'm gonna, if I can, share my screen quickly and show the committee what I'm referring to. So screen 2 should be on the screen in just a moment. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is, oops, let me just zoom in a tad more. So this is the boundary of the proposed boundary for the East End neighborhood. And again, I'm going to defer to the committee if we want to discuss this now about your thoughts and ideas about potentially revising this boundary so that there's a different boundary reflected in the next iteration of the draft official plan. Or do we want to leave the boundary the same? It's basically an open discussion at this point.
Okay. So it was, if I remember, it was Al McNair that brought that forward, Thomas?
Yes, it was a member of the public. Yes.
And did he, I think because his concern wasn't it related to like one side of Steel Street is a part of it and the other side is not? When they're both identical? Like, did you get a written submission from him?
I did, and it's not necessarily a Steel Street per se, Kathy. It's
okay.
This boundary actually doesn't follow a road or a street. It actually follows a property boundary. So properties are backing onto each other. Right. And it didn't seem to make a whole lot of sense to him at the time.
Right.
I did receive additional information about why this boundary was put together, and it was based on a historic plan for the city of Barrie. And that's the extent of that plan. So the boundary that you see on the screen here, this black line, is the extent of that plan. And there is opportunity to, of course, move this boundary up to Steele. We can move it up to any one of these local roads. I will be performing a walk of this neighborhood or doing a site visit at some point in the future to try to ground truth the boundary as much as possible.
Right.
But it sort of makes sense to me to perhaps move that boundary northwards to align it with the proposed boundary for Kempenville Village. And it would sort of go into Steele, Wellington, and go down Wellington this way.
Right.
This area is characterized, is really diverse. So in this area, you have clearly, Gothic and Victorian homes that were once on a large piece of land, and land has been severed slowly. And you have what look like victory housing. You have what look like 60s and 70s bungalows. Then you have sort of the transition to 80s and 90s sort of suburban homes with a garage in front. So you see this transition of this neighborhood. It's not as super clear, in my opinion, as, for example, Allendale or Brock Park, where you clearly have sort of a built form. You've got of 10 houses, 6 are the same or 7 are the same. This area tends to be a little bit more diverse. But again, I'll be doing a walkthrough of this area to confirm.
Does it make sense, Thomas? Are you allowed to have someone from the committee walk with you? I'm not that familiar with this area. Maybe Deb is, or like if somebody with the committee went with you as well and you sort of discussed as you were walking around.
I think so. Depending on the city's
right.
policies on COVID and whatnot, I don't think that'd be a problem for me personally, but we can just check that through run that up the chain, but yeah, it should be possible.
Yeah, I think definitely I would say that a walkthrough is necessary, because if we're just really going based on old plans, and somebody has come forward to say, well, in this area, I think we should be looking at this, then I think it's hard to determine when you look at Google Map.
That's right.
It's better to actually walk through the neighborhood and have a look and get a feel, and you'll know.
Yeah.
Okay, so then can I infer that the committee wishes to sort of hold off providing comment at this time until there's a walkthrough done and the committee's had a little bit more time? Okay, yeah, that's what I thought might happen. And the comments could be wrapped up as part of the official plan comments in general.
And Thomas, perhaps when you get the go-ahead from the city, you can email, and then somebody can walk with you, or maybe a couple of people. I'm not sure, but
okay.
Yeah, that'd be great. So the great idea, Thomas. Does anyone else have any comment about that? Okay, excellent. Oh, David, yes. Sorry, I don't have my glasses on.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick comment on how the boundary lines are drawn. Having been out on the streets now a little bit, does the boundary, if you place it on a street, does that exclude homes on the other side of the street? And perhaps this boundary between the homes or in behind the homes is a method of including both sides of the street. So just to keep that in mind about how the boundaries are drawn. Thank you.
That's a good point, because I think in Allendale, when they drew the line, one side of Burton was included and the other side wasn't. So you might be right, David. Excellent. Okay, does anyone else have any comments about that? Excellent. Okay, 2.5, historic neighborhood street signs. So I think that's myself and David right now. So David, do you want to start?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to update, it's my evaluations are ongoing, and perhaps Craig's as well. It's sort of obvious or it seems that there hasn't been eyes on the street in terms of what signs are where since they were installed. So I'm getting quite a lot of misses and corrections needed and such. I've done 2 neighborhoods and I'll do another one. And I think, Craig, you're going to help me then put these into a document on some software. And that's about all comment I have really on that. But yeah, that's going to be quite a long list, I think, of corrections needed, and hopefully we'll be able to narrow it down. Oh, I did have a question. It seems that on the lists I've been working from doesn't include this East End that we were just discussing, but it does include Kempenfeld.
Mhm.
Does anyone know that there is no signs in the East End, or is it still proposed? I'm not certain where that's at. Thank you.
Yeah. Deb, did you wanted to say something there? Or, I think East End wasn't included. And so they didn't do the signs for that. And I think that was a big push that we wanted to do that for sure.
Yeah, perhaps there's, I should know better, but perhaps there's none there. I don't know.
Yeah. Yes, Deb.
Yeah, there are some signs. If you go out Shanty Bay Road, it says historic Kempenfeld Village, like for Puget Street, but they're down towards the water. So,
Yeah.
Right.
And
I don't know how many, but there are some in the far east end.
Yeah, I think that's the Kempenfeld Village, but I think between
Right.
downtown and Kempenfeld, the East End was not part of the historic neighborhoods, and that's
Yeah.
why it was missed. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Kempenfeld Village went
Yeah.
all the way up to Steel Street, which I think used to be called something else at the time, but and as far as Penetanguishene Road.
Now, I actually emailed a not official list, but I emailed, I think I had 12 to 14 streets that I identified in Tollendale, and then in Allendale, and then in Brock Park, and then I went to the East End. And so I sort of sent out the ones I thought that I could find, and then David is going to send me his list, and then what I'll do is I'll put it all together on one list. But we do have budget to be able to do historic signs right now. We have the budget, and we can't do them all because it says we need to do 120. And we don't have the budget for that, but we could actually start to do some, and maybe they could be done at the sign shop and get them going. I mean, I think if we can do that, that would probably look like we're getting things done. So I know in Allendale on William Street, for example, which was kind of missed, a lot of the neighbors would really like.
I know. You can't walk around the neighborhood.
Yeah,
We have to slink.
Someone yelling at me or throwing an apple or something. So my hope was if we have the budget for it, we could actually at least get some going now so that they can be going up this summer. That's my sort of suggestion or request. I don't know what people think. Kathy?
Do we know how much a street sign cost? So to get done? And then we could maybe make a suggestion of a number of signs, how many, like.
Yeah. The budget says they're $200 each. That's what we have on the budget.
Okay.
And so we could do quite a few, right? Like we have the budget for it. So yeah, Kaylee?
Does that include like the installation as well, or is that just for the sign itself? And do they do like if you get so many, you get a discount, or is it 200 per sign plus like installation per sign?
I believe that's with the city sign shop. So I
Yeah.
don't think they do like discounts. I think you just sort of say, I want this many signs and they do it. That's what I would think, but. Does anyone else have any suggestions? Yeah.
Would we need to get a quote Do we need it, like, Thomas, if we're getting signs done by the sign shop, will they give us a quote? Or
Yeah, go ahead, Thomas.
do we have to do that?
Thank you. I think we need to confirm, because those were 2019 costs when I got that cost. And I got that cost when we actually ordered 2 signs. We got a sign, the one that we bring to public events. We have a green street sign with the poppy, and we have a historic street sign, which is a little bit larger. I actually think those are $250. But that was 2019 costs when we had those original ones done. So yes, we would need to get a quote. And I was going to suggest that, in the interest of equity, we try to distribute, as installing signage sort of evenly throughout the neighborhoods. And I was going to suggest that perhaps we start with intersections of like major roads, so arterial and arterial intersections, or arterial and a collector, or arterial and a local road, and then we sort of move down that hierarchy. So like an arterial road would be like Yonge Street or Essa, and then collector road is something like a Wellington, and then your local roads are of course like William or Cumberland. Those are your local roads. So that, that's just my suggestion, but the committee can choose to focus on specific historic neighborhoods. If one just needs rounding out, you do that, and then you move on to the next one.
The other thing I was going to say is, just by walking around, I don't know if David, if you would concur, or Deb, is I find that the signs tend to be on all the smaller streets, that the arterial road ones tend to be the green signs. And they all tend to be the smaller, like local street signs. That's my experience. I don't know if David or Deb has a different, saw it differently. Would you, yeah, Kathy?
Yeah, I just was thinking like Milburn Street, for instance. Milburn has the big green sign. And it would be really good. I don't think that's on your list, but that would be a good one, because Milburn was one of the first developers in this neighborhood in 1851. So, we know that. But what if we did if we determined that we could afford to do, 30 signs or 40 signs or whatever, and then just divide them between each of the areas and do, 10 in Kempenfeld, 10 in Blake, 10 in whoever's missing, 10 more in Allendale, 10 more in Brock Park. So everybody gets a little something and they can see we're actually doing something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
David? Yeah.
Oh, yes, thank you. There's both. First of all, the list I've been working with anyways isn't even complete. There's a lot more. There's more historic signs than we even know of. So once we have a good master list, I agree it would be easy to prioritize. And if there's, if whatever the budget, whatever we're allowed, we can, hopefully get a lot of them done. And it would be easy to prioritize and say, okay, well, let's, work our way along some of the main streets. And we could easily just pick some that were maybe more important than others. Some of them are green signs that are okay, but they need replaced. There's a couple of very different variations on the theme here about what's needs done. But yes, we could make a priority list for sure. Yeah.
Excellent. Shelley?
Just as a newbie here, so are there just green signs, or are there a variety of, historic neighborhood street signs? They come in different shapes and sizes, do they?
So basically they have the name of the area underneath.
Yeah.
So we'd say like William Street, and then we'll say Allendale, right?
Right.
So
But they're the green signs primarily.
no, they're the black historic signs. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I'm in favor of it. Depends on how long it's going to take to put a list together. So maybe we just say, okay, let's stop doing what we're doing. Let's work with the list that we have now, because if there's 120 and we, and it's going to be on and on, as David said, he's doing research and it's going to be more and more. We're not going to be even to do 120 or however many is on the list now. So why don't we just say, okay, we have a list now. We're going to keep adding to the list, but let's take a look at the list and let's prioritize, as I said, either the mains, like I like Thomas's idea that we do the main, you know, we have at least a structure and a system in place of we work there, and when we work down based on, and then we do that in each neighborhood. And then we have a system, and we can always add to this list of signs and slowly over the next couple of years work our way through it. A process.
Yeah, Thomas, did you have your hand up? Sorry, Thomas, go ahead.
Yes, I did. Thank you, Chair. And I just had a quick comment, just a correction of on my suggestion, because I'm just doing some Google mapping through Allendale. And for example, Burton and Essa, which is within 2 historic neighborhoods, that intersection is signalized, and it actually has the street signs on top next to the street light, or the street light, the traffic light. And I don't think we'll be replacing those. And that's basically 2 arterial roads. So my suggestion of arterial and arterial is not going to happen. But something like an arterial and a collector, or an arterial and a local, where there's no signalized intersection, it's those are the streets that we're going to get. So I'll just give you another example of something in Allendale, and I believe it's Bayview and Burton. That's another one of actually, neither of those I believe are arterial roads, but that one, for example, won't get the black signage. It would have to be the local road. So that's probably the intersection. So that will decrease the number of signs we need, for sure.
Excellent. Sarah? Oh, sorry, Sarah, and then Kathy. Go ahead, Sarah.
I just had a thought about awareness of the signs, because it seems like perhaps they're not as visible as we think they are. Like, we're looking for them, but maybe other people in our community are not. So as part of putting the new signs up, is there a way to do a bit of a campaign to show people that we are doing that sort of a thing? Like, if you don't live in a historic neighborhood, you'll never know that they're up, especially if they're only going on sort of side streets. Is there anything that we could think of that, besides, you know, showing them off at the events that we get to do, depending on however many we get to do this summer with COVID and everything, you know, is there maybe a newspaper ad or something that we can put up on the website that highlights it while we're doing it, and then people can maybe do a look out for this, it's coming, or something like that?
That's a good point. Excellent. Education.
Yep.
Kathy, did you want to speak next? Because you had
Yeah, I just wanted to ask while Thomas was Googling, if you could look at Millburn and Young.
Okay.
Or Millburn and Burton, because that's also like a signalized, but Millburn is, I think it's an arterial. I'm not sure what you consider that.
Millburn. Is that street? Millburn Street, Barrie?
Yeah, Millburn and Burton.
Millburn and Burton.
Yeah. That's sort of where, when you're coming along Young Street, it changes to Burton Avenue.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the beginning of Allendale.
So I don't think Millburn is an arterial road. I think it's probably a collector, but that intersection of Burton and Millburn is signalized. And so you wouldn't likely replace those street signs, but down the street, sorry.
So that's probably why they were never done.
Right. I think so.
In the first place, right? So
Millburn and Cumberland has signage, the historic Allendale signage.
Yes, it does. So, but here's my question then. Simcoe Street, downtown, Simcoe Street has one of the bigger black historic street signs. What makes Simcoe Street different than?
Simcoe Street.
Yeah, so Simcoe, like near the bus terminal area?
So Simcoe and Bayfield, Simcoe and Mapleview, or sorry, Maple Ave.
Maybe, I can't remember exactly, but I know Simcoe Street because I remember thinking, gee, I wonder why they have the black, bigger historic sign here on Simcoe Street, but we don't have that elsewhere.
So they are black signs with white border and white letters,
Right.
but it doesn't say historic downtown.
Ah, okay.
It just says Maple Avenue. Let's jump up to the next one over.
Okay.
Yeah, Bayfield and Simcoe also has just black signage.
Right, okay,
So that might have been done through a different initiative, Kathy, earlier on.
right, okay.
I'm sorry, Shelley, you had your hand up. Does anyone else? I'm sorry, I missed their hand. Okay, Shelley, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Is there, because these are the kind of things that, for me, coming in new, like, is one of us on the committee in charge of and leading this street signs? Because I think that from an observation of coming in, I think it's good that we have discussion, but maybe one of us needs to take a lead or be responsible for certain areas, so we don't just, you know, I think it's good to have discussion, but sooner or later, right, somebody needs to take ownership or responsibility to kind of either have a breakout discussion or come back or have a recommendation of what we do between now and the next meeting. I don't know. I could be stepping out of line here, but I'm just kind of curious as to how we normally do this, using this one subject as an example.
So David and I volunteered to go and actually start to find all the signs. So we just volunteered that we would do that. So right now we're working on that and working out and finding it. And then basically that's why the two of us kind of had the information about it. So. And
then then that information, would it go then to Thomas or something like that, so that we can eliminate whether or not, okay, it's a signal, so it's not getting a sign, even if it's on the list, it's not getting a sign, like, so that somebody has to go through the list and say, okay, those are not even eligible, if you want to call it that word, for a sign, so take it off the list. Is like, who does that? So that's a Thomas, because it becomes a city planning streetlight situation. And again, forgive me, I'm just being naive. I don't understand how we, you know, kind of, and how we can finalize this list a little bit better.
Okay, Thomas.
That's thanks for asking that question, Shelley. It's a great question. And yes, so Craig and David have sort of volunteered themselves to pull that information together.
Right.
Once I get that information, what I'd probably do is get a map made up by our GIS technician, and we would come up and we would bring that to the committee, and then the committee can look at all the dots on the maps and say, you know, what are our priority areas? And to your point, I would have likely sent that map over to our traffic team or operations team to see, you know, where they're not going to replace those signs, because the street signs, the local street signs, they're about 9 feet up, so you can get on a step ladder and do a quick replacement. But on a signalized intersection, you need to close the road, you need to get a skyjack, get up there. Like it's a much more complicated procedure. So I think we'd be looking at replacing as many of the local ones as we can. So that map, when I come back to the committee, would have been sort of vetted by staff. And then we would make a decision from there.
Thank you, Thomas, through the chair. So again, what kind of time frame? I mean, that just sounds like oh my God, you know, first we're getting the list together, which is great, and we're volunteers, and then you're taking the friggin' list and you're getting a map company or whatever to do it, and then it goes to the traffic department. I'm thinking, oh my God, we won't have a sign up 8 months from now. Just asking. So is there any way to expedite the process or work in tandem, or just so that, as you said, if we want to get things done, I'm just kind of looking for a process. I look at process things and find a way if we can streamline it.
Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I'm just trying to get you to see my hand because it keeps disappearing, my background.
Yeah.
That's a great suggestion, Shelley, and I'll leave that for the committee to discuss as to how we want to accelerate that. The one thing I was going to say, the only real time constraint that we are working with is that we have to make the purchase or spend the funds within this calendar year. So that is definitely doable. I mean, we've got till December really to do that. But if the committee wants to get them installed, you know, by the fall, then we definitely need to have a much more scoped exercise. And I mean, that's of course the committee's decision on how to do that.
Okay, Sarah's got her hand up. Go ahead, Sarah, and then Kathy. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, would it be easier for the city department that's going to take it on if we did it in a map to begin with rather than a list? Like you can go into Google Earth and put a little pin down every place that we see them, which is basically what they're going to do. And then they could maybe quickly go and see it and let us know which ones are off limits, or maybe is it possible to go and talk to them now, just as a general question, if we wanted to replace some signs, what's off limits? And then we could maybe come together with a bit less information really than just a sort of pile load, and we could maybe save some of the larger stack of information for when we have done just a little bit that we can do now, and it just kind of makes it so it's not a burden to whoever's going to get it in the city, and it might make it a little bit quicker. I don't know.
Good. Kathy, you had your hand up first, and then we.
And I'm just trying to remember what. Do we? I mean, should we even at this point? Should we even be talking about perhaps how much we want to budget for this particular item at this point, so that, is it, because we have 23,600 to spend. We just spent 5,000. We just approved 5,000 tonight for Thomas for the previous item. Do we want to say we want $5,000 for signage? Do we want to say, or how do we go about coming up with that number? Do we just want to pick a number and then get as many signs and then determine where they go? Or so that we can actually, like you say, get working, get stuff up in tandem? Because we do have a list where we know there are not signs that will be approved.
I was just going to say, we do have a budget and we already have a number.
Do we have a number for signage, like already?
$6,600.
Oh, okay.
So we can, like I said, we can spend that money. We have it in our budget. It's for that. We can use it right now, and we can get signs going with that money. So Councillor Harris had his hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, it was kind of a half of a raise, but I do think that, yeah, we've got a budget item and we've got streets identified. Let's take the money we have, the streets we've identified, and let's make a plan to get them signs. We'll be able to make the efforts to get the other places that are not yet on our list, but let's work from the list and the budget we have, and let's get that project going forward. So I don't think we need a motion to use the current budget assigned for signs and the list that we have of streets without signs, and move forward with getting the signs put up on those streets, would be my thought.
I think that's a great idea. Does anyone else have any opinion on that? Shelley?
Thanks, Chair. I think the only thing I would do, Jim, to add to that, I totally agree, is to the point that was made earlier that maybe we look at the list and we at least divide it into, are there 4 neighborhoods? Again, bad question, I guess, but are there 4 signage neighborhoods?
Yeah, and the one Tollendale, I think there's only maybe 3 streets really in that area that have historic homes that could be. So some of the streets that are done have no historic homes in them at all, and then there's other streets with historic homes where there's no sign, which that doesn't make sense to me. But anyways, I think that we've got a list of ones that we could do right now, and Thomas could determine with the budget how many we can get, and we can get them going. And I think the sooner the better myself. And
then we work on the list, that, a more comprehensive list that for next year, then we have a little bit more of a process as far as to Thomas's, maybe not intersections, but some kind of and then divided by neighborhood or whatever, but at least we move ahead with what we have now.
Yeah,
I would agree with that motion then.
Yeah, good. Okay, so does anyone else have an opinion on that? So I guess, do we vote on that? And so do you agree with that? Does everyone agree with that? Excellent. Okay, very good. Thank you. Awesome. All right.
Sorry, did we just pass something?
Yeah, we just passed.
So you
I-
approved, excuse me, you approved
Yeah.
an expenditure. Is that what you did?
Yes, we
For
did.
how much did you approve it for?
Up to $6,600 on historic signs. Excellent. Okay, that feels good. All right. Preparation for annual heritage stakeholders meeting. All right. So that is Shelley, Kathy, and myself.
Hey.
So why don't we get Shelley to because you know she was very good, very efficient in this meeting. I learned a lot about how to do things, so that was great. So let's go.
I just sent an agenda. We worked it through. We had a time frame. We had next steps, action items. We just got it done.
Yeah,
So
in 40 minutes.
In 40 minutes, because that's the length of my Zoom calls. So not 2 hours. So no, I'm just, I'm just being light about this. So no, we did have, I don't have my notes in front of me. So we did have one meeting. How long ago was that? I should have them in front of me, shouldn't I?
Yeah, I've got it here, June 1st.
Okay, June 1st.
Yeah.
Okay. And we did come up with a proposed date, which is?
October 8th.
October 6th.
Oh, October
6th.
6th.
Yeah. From 6:30 to
8:30.
8:30.
Yeah.
And we did talk a little bit about the format, and we have recommended that we move ahead with organizing a virtual meeting for October. But if it goes live, it'll be no problem to go live. I haven't had a chance to let Kathy and Craig know that I had a good conversation today with Julie Kraft from the Chamber of Commerce. And she has even volunteered to help us do the Zoom meeting, which is very similar to the chamber chats, where you basically come in, you could have 40 people. And the idea was the format. We would do a PowerPoint presentation. We would update everybody on what the Heritage Committee has done and what we're thinking. And because it's October, we're saying the purpose of this meeting is to get your input, because we are doing our plans for next year. So there's a purpose and we need your input. So we give them what we've been doing, and then we give them maybe 4 or 5 subjects, and they would be breakout rooms, and we can easily have done this in Zoom, but Julie will help us. Then we all go into breakout rooms, we come back and we talk about next steps and we move forward. So that's the premise of the meeting. We also talked a little bit about, we have to come up with, so Kathy was going to summarize a little bit of trying to get into all those really good suggestions that she had out of our master plan. She was going to try and group them into 4 or 5 subject matters, so to speak. And then, so that's one area we still have to work on. The other area is, what I wanted to ask is, going back to the date, is it something that we can, and I don't know if Tammy does this, can we book a meeting room now for October the 6th? On the premise that we will be able to use the room on October 6th. How do we go about doing that? That's a question. And then Tammy?
Yes, I can. The only thing is I'm unsure if we're going to be still virtual format.
I know. We understand. So if we book it, we know we've got it. And but we are going to organize it as if we're going virtual, but we would really love to do it live.
Yeah, and if it's a Zoom format, that would probably have something be managed by our office here, if it's Zoom, if we're still doing the Zoom format.
Perfect.
Because it'd be considered like a committee meeting.
Perfect.
Your
And so didn't have a chance to talk to you. So are you familiar with the Zoom breakout rooms and all of that?
I have to learn about that part of it. So,
okay, so yeah. Julie has offered to work with you and to help us do it. Okay.
Okay.
And then the last thing that we had talked about the last thing that we talked about in our meeting was who's going to be invited. And so that's, we're talking about the format. We've got done the date, the format, and we're looking at the topics. Then the last thing is, who should we invite and how do we invite them if we have to, not entice them with, pizza and beer, but just kidding. What do we do to make sure that they come to the meeting? So we had a really good meeting, and we still have a few takeaways from that. And any questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Kaylee.
I thought that we were maybe doing an earlier meeting. So if people wanted to do like a virtual open doors in September, like some stuff that was coming up like that could be addressed early on. And I'm wondering if instead of doing like breakout rooms, you do like kind of more like one topic, one stakeholder, and then it's not such a long meeting and there's not as much information, like gear each sort of project that we're doing to a specific stakeholder or group of stakeholders, and then do like multiple smaller meetings.
Well, if I could add, through the chair, I mean, I think we have to look at it. You run it like you would run a live meeting. And if you're going to talk about 20 topics, it just with 30 to, let's say 30 to 40 people, it'll be very hard. I think sometimes I've found when I've done those kind of meetings, it's very hard to get any kind of, you're not looking for consensus. You are looking for feedback, and there's ways to do that. I think it's a good idea, Kaylee. We were that's why Kathy's trying to look at grouping them so that we actually, can have groups, and there would be like 4 or 5 groups. They would be all talking about the same subject, and then there would be a key person that would come back and bring their notes forward, and we would be recording the sessions, or so that we would have all the information and the discussion about those subjects. Does that make sense?
So if everybody's broken off into different groups talking about the same thing, but everybody sometimes is sort of on their own project, we don't necessarily have all the information for all the projects. So I'm not sure how that would work. And my thing was just like one thing. So if it's like I don't know, like we're trying to do like entry street signs or something, or like the trees, you'd come and just do like the trees. So you'd have a big presentation so people would know how many, what you're planning, budget and stuff like that. So everything is sort of like a business meeting. You have everything laid out. And because I think a lot of times we're just asking for people to maybe contribute financially or a bit of time, and not necessarily a big discussion on what to do, sort of a, can you help us? And we have everything laid out. So a little less of a discussion, more of a complete, like with the trees and everything, we know the budget and how many, so everything's together. We don't need to say how many are we going to do, stuff like that. So everything is sort of put together before you go.
Then we're just telling them what we're doing. I think this is a little bit more what we're trying to do is, I think when Craig and Kathy and I talked about it, it was more about creating awareness of what the Heritage Committee are doing. And so therefore it's more than one topic, and just saying, this is what we're doing, how many trees, we're spending this, and they're going to go in there. It was, we're going to them to tell them about what we're doing in our work plan, all of these projects perhaps, and we're asking them to help prioritize what we should be focusing on the next year. Really is a way to get around talking about awareness of what the committee is doing and getting their input and helping us prioritize. That's what we talked about.
Then, like we did, like Sarah and Craig did at a council meeting one time, was give an update on what we're doing rather than giving specific topics. It was an all around sort of an update rather than bringing our projects to stakeholders for assistance, sort of 2 separate meetings.
Actually, Sarah, go ahead.
I just think I'm a little confused. So I was thinking that the original time that this was brought up was more of a, what projects can people help us with? And I'm a little confused as to what the breakout groups would be discussing in terms of kind of how they can help us achieve those goals. It seems like now, is it more we want to know what the stakeholder groups want us to do first rather than what we are deciding on? I'm just a little confused. Maybe we could go over it again.
Yeah. I was just gonna say before Kathy is, I think the idea was, Kathy had a very long list of lots of things. And we were just saying it's overwhelming, it's too many. And so the idea was to maybe take that list and sort of group it into sort of 4 different sort of almost projects. And the idea here is people in the community, different groups would maybe that have an interest in one of these projects would be in the group, the breakout room, because they'd have kind of a common interest in it. So let's say the trees, for example, you have the Legion, you might have, you know, some different groups, and they would have some common interests. And the idea is, okay, how can we get this project? And the other thing is like kind of bringing in people from the community, not only what do we need, but how can Heritage Barrie help sort of work with them towards heritage goals. I think that was kind of what we were thinking about. Does that make sense, Sarah? Or in Kaylee, or no?
A little bit. So these breakout groups, each one of them is going to be talking about a different thing that's pertaining to whoever's in that specific group. They're not all going to be talking about the same thing.
So different things.
Yeah.
So there'd be like 4 projects that are kind of different, and they'd have different groups that do it, and then we'd report back as a sort of, this is what each group is sort of looking at, and then we'd have like a summation at the end. That's
sorry. So then, okay, so all the information comes back to the center, let's say us. How do we then prioritize based on what the community thinks is a priority? So like if we have 5 breakout groups, isn't everybody in the breakout group going to think that their project is the most important and we should do it first? So how do we then rank what everybody in the community then wants to do? Because everyone's going to want to do something that sort of fits their agenda, which totally makes sense. But how are we going to prioritize at that point?
I think all these projects are already on our work plan anyway. So these are things we're working on anyways. So the idea is for next year that we could get assistance, but we can also sort of spread, these are the things we're doing as a committee, and maybe people would after that go, hey, I'd really like to help with that. And that might be where we get support from the community, because I think they might not know about some of these projects. And so it's awareness as well. That was my taking from it. So Kathy, what were you going to say?
Yeah, and you know, really the main focus is to create a collaborative effort with other like interested groups. And so one of the things that maybe is missing here is I was going to, as Shelley had said, work on creating, like from the list that I had sent out, was just sort of try to determine based on my knowledge of these groups and what they do and what we've done with them in the past, is try to group them in like areas. So for instance, you know, one of the things was the Ontario Lieutenant Governor's Heritage Awards. And we talked about maybe putting nominations forward. So that would be a really great thing to do for the city. And, you know, that group in particular might include, you know, someone from the McLaren, someone from the BIA, someone from tourism, and someone from the Barrie Native Friendship Center. So that would be a breakout group. And they would talk about, you know, because they're sort of in the arts, and, you know, it goes back to what the list of the Governor's Heritage Awards are. So they would be able to maybe come up with some ideas and suggestions for us. And then another group we have on the list is, you know, public art and historic murals. So I've sort of said, and this is just, it's not done yet, but, you know, city staff would work, like city staff being Stephanie Schlichter or Amanda Dyke, somebody from the McLaren, people from the community might be interested in this. And again, the Barrie Native Friendship Center. You know, helping with on the spot app, that would be Tourism Barrie. somebody from the BHA, so Barrie Historical Archive Group. So I'm trying to put like groups together, if that helps.
Kaylee, go ahead.
I'm wondering if we shouldn't do like more than one meeting. Like you could always have one quick one with whoever wants to come, all the stakeholders, and you could always give a brief overview of what we've sort of done and what we want to do.
Mhm.
Then they have a quick idea of what we've done, what we want to do.
Mhm.
And then they could always go back to their larger group or even to people they know in the community.
Mhm.
They could always give feedback on those, as well as any other ideas they might have, and then do specific meetings to these groups with stuff. So they have time to sort of think about it and then come back, rather than having such a long, drawn out meeting. And then maybe, like, I know some stuff we need to put together more, so I'll kind of go what stuff is ready and not ready, but it might be more beneficial to kind of give them information up front, and then they have time to think about it and come back.
Sarah has her hand up. Did Jim have his hand up too? I wasn't sure. Yeah. Okay. So go ahead, Sarah, first, and then Jim.
Dave, you want to go ahead of me? Because you definitely had your hand up first.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure.
Yes.
Okay, good. Put my glasses on. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I'll go, Sarah. I'll just say, I do want to re-engineer and thank you, Craig and Shelley and Kathy, for taking this on. My only thought would be, as a friendly, I like the idea of the breakouts. I think what I would suggest would be that in the invitation, you could ask people to self-select which breakout they would like versus deciding who goes where. And I see Shelley nodding, maybe that's already the plan. I just thought I heard Kathy say something else, that we would direct people, because certainly that's going to already show interest if they select, hey, I'd love to get into that one about the trees. So, and then just, I may have missed it, I apologize. What was the length of meeting you were planning to have? Was it a 1 hour, like 10-minute introduction, 20-minute breakouts, and then maybe it's 45 minutes? You talked about 40 minutes, Shelley, so I was expecting it wasn't going to be long and drawn out. So.
Well, I think one of the things we decided was we would take the presentation we did for council, and that would be an intro, just to sort of say what we're doing. We're going to obviously change and add some things, and that would be a start, sort of an intro to what we've been doing, what we're working on, and then we'd have the breakout. So I think we have a 2 hour, we set around 2 hours for that, the whole thing.
So the breakout wouldn't be 2 hours.
No,
The breakouts might be.
Sorry, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just, 2 hours seems long. I would just caution that, but definitely, and I like the idea of getting more people on heritage, and it's a lot, being involved in a project is different than being involved in a committee. So people would probably be passionate, and we get more helpers and maybe some more funding. Who knows what we get? So I like the idea, and I thank you for the efforts. And that'd be my caution, is don't select their groups, and try not to be too long.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, you had your hand up. Sorry.
Okay, that was basically what I was going to say, is perhaps they could have a say in which way they go, because they might be interested in more than one project, and somehow I'm sure that could be facilitated. They send a couple people or however they do it, but I had the same idea. So it seems like we're along the same lines.
And I was just going to say, we're going to have another meeting, and that's why we're talking to you now, so we can sort of bring it back, organize it. And so we just really, thanks very much for everyone's feedback. That's really great. And so we're going to have another meeting, and we're going to organize it. So that's great. It's Kathy.
And I was just going to say, I participated in the Safe Consumption Site workshop that they had, and they did some really interesting things. So within the breakout groups. So the breakout groups, we didn't spend, it might have been maybe 15 minutes in a breakout group, and then it came back to the whole group. And each person from each breakout group just did a quick summary of what they talked about. And, so it doesn't, we're not spending the whole 2 hours on the chat and the breakout room part of it. So there'll be more fulsome discussion.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Okay. Anyone else about that? So thank you very much. We're going to meet again. Shelley, we'll have to figure out when we like, but probably relatively recently, just sort of while it's in our head, and we'll go over it. And then that's what we'll be working on in September. We'll definitely have it all organized, and then we'll do it in October. Okay, excellent. Okay, 2.7 zoning bylaw housekeeping amendment. Thomas, maybe.
Thank you, Chair. So this was actually something that Kathy had brought up, and there's a city-initiated housekeeping amendment going forward. Public notice was issued on May 20th, 2021, and it is it's characterized as a citywide update to the affordable housing provisions of our zoning bylaw. And really, it addresses a number of issues that we sort of run into on a day-to-day basis working with the zoning bylaw. So, for example, there is revisions to definitions to words such as basement, first story, the word story, defining second suite, duplex, definitions for things like a tandem parking space. There's also some provisions for standards for second suites. There's also standards for detached accessory dwelling units. So it's a pretty comprehensive or pretty large sort of update, but all sort of targeted to helping us manage sort of the volume of requests for these additional dwelling units within residential homes. And I know that Kathy, at the public meeting for the open house, you had mentioned that you, for the official plan, you mentioned you had concerns at that time, and you were hoping to ask some questions. And I believe you were directed to staff, to speak to staff about your concerns, specifically regarding to this housekeeping amendment, because I think this housekeeping amendment will address some of your concerns. So really, this is an opportunity for the committee to just get informed as to the amendment and ask me questions. I'm actually going to share my screen, and I'm going to show the contents of the public notice. Where is the share screen button? Share screen 2. And I believe, Kathy, you had actually sent an email out to everybody with a link to this notice. So everybody should have a link directly to this. So I can go through this notice line by line. I could go in through individual sections, but really it is very detailed and providing standards on things and definitions on different words. So it's really up to the committee as to how we proceed from this point on. If you want me to go further into detail, which I can, we've got till 8:30. So
Thomas, I just have a question. So is this, I got something from Shelby in the format of, because in the original notice that went out, it was lacking information. And there was going to be further information to come. So what you're showing, is that the most current information? Because she sent me a chart that I just got, I think, yesterday.
Okay.
Which went into more definition, because there's, I think in here it's talking about establishing, but it actually didn't tell you what, like height and density and that. So I don't know that this is.
Okay, so I think she may have sent you the actual chart from the staff report.
Maybe.
Okay.
Because it just got loaded onto the project, onto the build. I think it just got loaded onto the project website. But the whole reason really that I wanted to talk about this is just to make people, sort of aware that we've been running into problems in the historic neighborhoods. And part of it is with the not the second suites so much, because second suites are suites that are within the primary building. Is that correct, Thomas?
Yes, second suites are either within the basement of a primary building or attached to it, whereas a detached accessory dwelling unit is fully detached from the principal structure.
Right. And so one of the things, and this just might be able to get it to where I want it, is so what's happened is in some cases, the detached dwelling, or the second building that's going to be built in a historic neighborhood is larger than what we were, or some of the ones we've seen are larger than what people were expecting from previous accessory units. Were sort of like what you would consider to be a granny suite, which might be like a single story small granny suite. And what's happening is that they're much larger. And if we are doing this throughout the historic neighborhoods, it actually changes the entire complexion of the and character of the historic neighborhood.
So I think
that was, that was some of my concern, and I haven't actually had a chance, Thomas, to go through this yet.
Okay.
If this is this sort of looks like it probably is.
Yeah, so this is likely the chart, and I can send the link to this chart to the committee.
Right.
And it is, because it is such a detailed document. I don't anticipate us to go through each one of these items, but I would recommend that each committee member look at this chart and send me their comments if they have concerns regarding impact of the proposed changes on the historic neighborhoods. If you have any questions, you can of course send those my way. And if you have comments, please send them to me, and I will send the committee's comments all together to the file manager.
Right, and the public meeting or the public meeting is on June 15th, right?
Let me see here.
Yeah, June 15th. It's the planning committee meeting?
That's right. Yeah, June 15th at 7 p.m.
Perfect. So we'd probably have to make comments before that so that you would have that. So we'd have to see it and then maybe make comments.
Yeah, or written submissions afterwards. But
written submissions is best up until the public meeting. And as their comments are coming from staff, they're treated a little differently than comments from the public. Right. Public has until the public meeting to submit comments, or you can make comments in verbally at the meeting. But when the comments are submitted through me, I'm part of the official planning team and the zoning bylaw team, so I could submit those comments a little bit later as well.
Right.
Great.
So yeah, that was mainly because there's been a number of, there was an article in the newspaper that, these are being built, and the neighbors on either side adjacent to, the house where the accessory unit is going, don't really know what's happening, and nor do the people behind them. And all of a sudden there's a big building in their backyard that they're now looking at. And so people have been raising those concerns. Okay. And I think it's just part of the process, or the way the process is working, and also the size, because the height really seems to be an issue for people. I think it's coming. You're trying to create affordable housing, which is great. We already have lots of affordable housing in the historic neighborhoods through second suites already.
Okay, Thomas, go ahead.
Yeah, that's a good point, Kathy. And part of that, the reason for the way that things have been moving forward is because of our zoning bylaw didn't actually have standards specifically for detached accessory dwelling units. We are actually following the provisions for accessory buildings and structures. So now a big chunk of this, an important component of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is to actually introduce standards for detached accessory dwelling units, which are proposed to be in a table 5.2.9.2. And that's an important table because it provides things such as maximum building height, maximum lot area. It provides setbacks, and there's a number of sort of verbal standards as well. So those are the ones that I mentioned are in a chart, and then below that there is sort of direction, sort of itemized from B to M. So there's quite a bit there. You know, and part of that is a response to committee's, the public's concerns about detached accessory dwelling units. So we've taken what we've heard from the public over the last year or so, and we're trying to address that. So I would recommend that the committee members look at the table, and it'll provide a link to that table and send me comments.
Excellent. So yeah, so Thomas, if you can do that, and then everyone can have a look at it, and then we can put some comments. That's great. That's awesome. Excellent. So I guess we're gonna move on to 2.8 heritage plaques for listed buildings. So Thomas.
Yes, thank you. Just 1 second, please.
Problem.
Just making a note for myself to send the link out to everybody.
Thank you.
And if you could have reference to that chart, the 5.2.9.2 is, if that was the right chart number.
Yes, so the chart that I'm going to send the committee actually is broken up into what is currently in the zoning bylaw and what is proposed to be added or changed. So it'll just say this text is being deleted or this text is being added. It's much clearer when you look at it yourself, when you've got it in front of you versus me trying to share it on the screen. But of course, please shoot me an email or give me a call, and we can always discuss the table and walk through it. So I will go ahead and send that out. If I can't get it up tonight, I'll send it out tomorrow.
Thank you.
And going back to point number 2.8, heritage plaques for listed buildings. So I've reached out to Owen Signcraft to get a current quote, because their quote for the aluminum CNC plaques, which I don't actually have a picture to show the committee. We had them when we met in person, which was over a year and something ago. Greg had brought them in. So I'm going to be asking them to give us an updated quote. And the reason that is that we actually shrunk the size of our designated plaques a little bit, and the aluminum plaques were supposed to be even smaller than that. So I suspect there's going to be a bit of a cost savings as well. And I asked them to provide me with a proof to see what it would actually look like. And as soon as I get that, we'll be circulating that to the committee, and we'll go from there. The other thing is that the committee asked me to do a mail out to all of the properties. So unfortunately, I have not been able to do the mail out yet, but I do have a list of all the listed properties that need a plaque, and have a request submitted to get all the mailing addresses for all those properties. So I should be able to get that list either by the end of this week or mid next week, and we'll get the letter sent out. We do have a template for the letter asking the property owner if they want a plaque. That's already been done. So it's just a matter of getting that sort of the labels for the envelopes, and then we'll go from there. I don't think I need to get an expense approval just at this time. Let me just see. Oh, that's probably why. I have unfortunately lost connection to my VPN. So I don't know the number of houses that are supposed to get. I believe it's over 20. And if the cost is around $309, which was the 2020 cost, let me do some quick math. That's around $6,000, I believe. Yeah, $3,000.
3,000. Yeah, that's what's in our budget. We have $3,000 on our budget for that.
Yeah. So it's up to the committee if the committee wants to approve that expense. So we don't have to do it at a later time. And all I'd have to do is just circulate the proof to the committee. And then the committee just says, yes, we like the proof, and I already have the authority to expense those funds. Then I could do that.
Beautiful. Okay, I think Kaylee had her hand up. Go ahead, Kaylee.
I just want to confirm that with the letter, we're also asking if any of them want to be designated rather than just listed, right?
You know what? I can't open the letter right now because I've lost connection to our network. But I will make a note for myself to confirm that is the case. It's a small change, so I should be able to do it, no problem.
Does anyone else have any comments or questions? So I guess the thing is that right now we could say, we can authorize that if you wanted to get that, you got your budget, we can look at the final proof and then away we go. Does anyone want to second that? Excellent. All right. Do you guys want to agree?
Yeah.
Excellent. We're doing well.
We're spending all the money.
Well, we want to do this too, because last time we ran out of time, right? So Tammy, I guess you heard that?
How much was the expenditure for?
$3,000, up to $3,000 for heritage signs.
Plaques.
Plaques.
For plaques for listed heritage properties.
Yeah. Excellent. And the other thing I think we said, if possible, as we're getting back the owners of these businesses or homes, was I thought we said sort of however many we do, we'd start with the ones that maybe were listed first, you know, the furthest back, and sort of work. If there's a lot, I don't know how we're gonna decide who gets the plaques. That's the only thing.
We should be able to do all of them, Craig, at this point. So like I said, I think there's about 20 or 25 listed properties. I suspect, you know, a third of those will decline. So we should be able to do all of them.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you. Great. So I think we're good there. Is everybody okay? Awesome. All right. Draft 2.9, draft 2 official plan update.
I believe that is me as well, Craig. Just give me one moment. I'm just making my note for myself.
Yeah, sorry. We're being expedient.
Okay, so that was $3,000 where bills expensed. Okay, so draft 2 official plan of the official plan. So I hope the committee is aware that we've already had an open house on the public meeting. I know several committee members were there. And we've also had a statutory public meeting for draft 2 of the official plan. We are currently, so the public consultation period for that is over, in that the public is needed to provide comments on draft 2 of the official plan by June 2nd, which was the day of the public meeting. However, we're still doing some internal consultation. We're still talking with our, different departments and different committees about comments that they had provided in the past and new comments that they have provided. So as this committee is, as an advisory committee of council, we refer to this committee as an internal stakeholder. So we still have some time to be able to look at the draft 2 and, for example, we talked about the boundary for the historic East End. That is something that came out of the public meeting. So that's why I'm bringing it to the committee. So this committee definitely has some more time to be able to look at draft 2 and provide staff with comments. I've met with 2 other committees, and I believe I'm going to another one tomorrow. And my suggestion, as has been in the past, is that the committee take a few members and look at the previous comments that were provided and ensure that those were addressed. And to review the official plan to see if there's any new comments that the committee wants to provide. The main difference between draft 1 and draft 2 is that we do not have urban design guidelines as part of this draft. We are going to be releasing those urban design guidelines a little bit later this summer for public consultation. So the current official plan the draft official plan has language about protecting cultural heritage resources, being, of course, listed and designated buildings. There is enabling language for the city to go further under the Ontario Heritage Act. There's, of course, protecting archaeological resources. There's limited language in the OP specifically about urban design within historic neighborhoods. We've actually opted to move that into the urban design guidelines. So that's a big change. And we did that because the urban design guidelines give us more flexibility than the official plan. And we don't think that will result in the loss of any protection and things like that, because we've strengthened the policies of the official plan. And we're essentially saying that if you can achieve the guidelines, they need to be achieved. And you know, the way that the guidelines are written, they're pretty flexible. And so that's sort of a general update. So now we are taking the comments that we received through the public meeting. We're reviewing those comments, and we're going to be preparing a comment tracking table. And we're going to publish that comment tracking table, which is going to have a summary of staff responses, or to give the public an idea as to where we're heading in addressing those comments. And then, so we're anticipating that will probably be like August, September. And then after that, there'll be a draft 3 that's released. That's going to go to council for adoption. So we're still a ways away from getting a draft 3. We still need to have that urban design guidelines prepared and released for public consultation. So at this point, we're just focusing on the draft 2. And you know, I wanted to make sure the committee is aware that you still have the opportunity to provide comment. And that would be all for me, Craig, and just to take questions from the committee.
Okay, Kathy, did you have something?
Thomas, is it possible for you to put up one of the maps from the official plan?
I can. Which map did you want to see?
Like map, I think it's a land use designation map.
Okay.
Land use designations, yeah.
1 second. Okay, it's up.
So, and the other question that I had is, based on this draft, is the goal to actually then do sort of a rezoning of these areas?
Yes, that is the normal process. So there's an official plan that is adopted by council, then it's approved by the minister.
Right.
And once it's approved by the minister, a new zoning bylaw that implements the vision of the official plan is implemented. So there's different ways of doing it. Some municipalities, what they do is they'll do a number of zoning bylaw amendments to their current zoning bylaw. And
right.
They'll, for example, do all of the employment areas, which is the stuff you see in purple.
Right.
And then they'll go through and do all the zoning for the yellow areas.
Right.
And so on and so forth. We intend to have an entirely new zoning bylaw. So we'll basically repeal the one and pass another one at the same time in the same meeting.
Okay, so it will. So in lay terms, for me, it's sort of like a blanket approach to the rezoning.
Yes. So it's going to take everything and repeal it and pass an entirely new one. Yes.
Okay. So what I wanted to just maybe point out and ask a couple questions, if I could, on this specifically, is where, if you go to, can you like point an arrow or a cursor?
Sure.
So Allendale area, obviously, along Essa Road. Yeah. So where, thank you. So maybe not quite. Oh, well, yeah, that'll be fine. So where it's medium, so all the yellow is the sort of single detached or local neighborhoods, correct?
Yeah, so yellow is the neighborhood area designation, which along local streets, heights are usually limited to about 3 stories.
Right. And then the area that is in, I don't know what you call peach color?
So this color here?
Color, yeah. So, yes. Yeah. So I'm looking at, and I see that there was a change made along Gowan Street. So that's changed. And then right at the corner, that corner piece of property, that's the Essa, William, Gowan, Cumberland.
Yes.
Which at one point, the city was looking at doing a change and it didn't pass. Because on the Cumberland side, we did not want to lose the historic homes that are there
Mhm.
to have a 12-story building put in, or at that time it was even bigger, I think. So would we, so all I'm trying to really get to is if I have comments about this, and if you look at, say, then follow Essa Road down the other side of Burton,
Mhm.
I think that's so that's Essa Road, and then back that street behind is Granville Street.
Yes.
So Granville Street would be rezoned to have 12 stories?
Not necessarily. So there, what we can do is in situations like where there's heritage considerations,
Yes.
there is ways to pre-zone properties to facilitate redevelopment right away, and there's
Right.
ways to zone them in a way that additional work would still be required. For example, such as holds would have to be put in place or can be put in place essentially. So there's a number of tools that we can implement to not permit, things to go forward as of right, because there's still studies still need to be done to make sure that the road capacity is there and infrastructure and things like that. So this official plan looks out to the year 2051.
Right.
So it's designating it in terms of at a high level over the long term.
Right.
This area is within the major transit station area and it's along an intensification corridor.
Right.
So in order to essentially protect the rest of Allendale from this sort of higher level of intensification, we've pushed things along Essa Road.
Right, which is fine, and I get, along Essa Road is great. But when you look at when it actually gets to the old Allendale section where, so for instance, from the 400 to Ann Street.
Yes.
There's really not much going on there. There's old car lots and there's some different things happening there. So that's, there's no question there. And then the other side of Ann Street, maybe not too much of a question, but once you get to Innisfil Street, in that section, and it backs onto Granville. Yes. Which is like a residential street with, historic homes on. There's a listed home on that street actually at this point.
So the reason we had included both sides, Kathy, and I think that's where you're going, is why did we do that? Really, it's because for a medium density sort of development up to 12 stories, so it doesn't mean that it's going to be 12. I mean, we are envisioning that in this area you can get up to 12. Usually you'll see the tall building go right up against Essa Road, and that's how the way draft policies are written.
Right.
And as the development sort of tapers towards Granville and then ultimately, I believe that's William, you would see lower built forms. So you would see townhouses and things like that. If there is a listed or designated property within that, so if somebody had consolidated a bunch of properties and one of them happened to be a designated property, that designated property would likely be worked into the development concept, and it would be surrounded by towns or singles, or depending on how they arrange that development. So no, you would get the tallest buildings closest to Essa Road, and they would not be permitted to be along William. Everything had to get pushed over. But for the development to function properly, that's sort of the minimum lot area that you would need.
Okay, so then if you look over to Innisfil Street, where you see the medium density, and this would be true of any other medium density, even in the urban growth center, is that there's quite a bit of historic neighborhood in there as well. That's existing homes now. So I see where the high density is, which is the reddy color. And that's Bradford Street. So that's Bradford Street along there. And then in behind Bradford Street, there and Innisfil, down Innisfil Street. That's like, there are some really lovely historic homes in there. So I would have concern, of, again, 12-story buildings being there as well. Craig, are you here? Oh, there you are. Do you see what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, I totally understand where you're coming from, Kathy, and I
So
knew
I don't,
this committee would have comments on that.
yeah, is that what we just will like just make comments?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's essentially what the committee would need to do, is just put
Yeah.
together a comments package. You know that the Councilor Rietma did that on behalf of the committee for draft
Right,
one.
right,
And we tried to address as many of those comments as possible.
right,
So in this round, you know, this was all high density in draft one,
right,
and we've pulled the high density back quite a bit. There's
right,
also provisions in the draft official plan that say, you know, when you're within a certain distance of a neighborhood area,
right.
which is the yellow,
Yes.
that certain built form is not permitted essentially in certain
Right,
other.
like the back-to-back or stacked townhouses or something?
Yeah, so anything that's sort of ground related housing would be preferable to, you know, 12-story building here.
Right,
Anything that's 12-story would need to be oriented to the major roads essentially.
okay, and then can you go to the downtown area?
Mhm.
So then here along Dunlop Street, for instance, especially between like sort of Dunlop at 5 Points, is that, what is that, Bayfield, yeah. So along there,
Mhm.
you're looking at where the existing historic downtown is.
Mhm.
You're designating this high density.
Yes. So I'm going to anticipate your concern here,
Thank you.
Kathy.
Thank you.
And one of the things that we know that when we published draft 2 is that we needed more language to speak to protecting the historic downtown, you know, facade and feel,
Yes.
and as well as integrating historic buildings into design and things like that.
Mhm.
And you'll likely see that in draft 3, but again, it's a comment that should be made by the committee as well.
So Thomas, your suggestion is maybe 2 or 3 people that,
Mhm.
that basically can look at this, and rather than go over the whole detail of the map, it would take us forever.
Yeah, no, I
make
just wanted
yeah,
to point this out so people understood.
yeah.
That's really what
you know, I think I would think that you know, that would be a good idea. If maybe we could have a couple of volunteers that perhaps could do that. And I know the chair is not here, but he did it the first time, and he might
Mhm.
have some great ideas. Kaylee, did you want to say? I can't see everybody, sorry, because of the map. I can see Kaylee though. Kaylee, go ahead. Kaylee, sorry, you got to turn your mic on. Sorry. Yeah, there you go.
So many clicks, I'm trying to figure it
Yeah.
out where to find the button. I just wondered if it would be beneficial if the same group got together, because they know maybe a bit more of what was already discussed.
Yes.
We all saw the letter, but I wonder if they would have more information.
So
go
who
through
was
it and
in
have
that
more
committee?
detail.
Kelly, do you know who's in that committee?
Sarah, I was thinking Kathy was, and someone else.
I think it was clear, Councilor.
Claire, yeah, Councilor. Yeah, so is Sarah, are you okay with that?
Yeah, sure. I can take a look at the archaeology again as well.
Awesome, that's great, thank you. And I'm sure Councilor Rietma would agree to that too. So,
Yeah.
yes, Thomas?
I would just make a comment that I can make myself available to the subcommittee to meet before the subcommittee sort of finalizes their comments.
Great idea.
Because there's often shoulder items that you may or you're not sure if they need to go in the letter or not, and I can probably help you answer those questions so you can tailor your letter to the specific concerns that you have.
Good. Kaylee, sorry, I see your hand. I can't see anyone else's hand, so if you
I'll
could
stop
take
sharing.
that map off, yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
There
Go
we go.
ahead. Sorry, Kaylee.
Guess it's just me talking. I just wanted to confirm that we all see the letter and everything and go over it before it goes on to council.
Good. Good. Does anyone else have any, thanks for bringing that up and showing us that. That's really, really important. So does anyone else have any comments on that? Excellent. Okay. Designated streetscape discussion. That's 2.10. I guess that was regarding the idea of certain areas that we'd sort of protect the streetscape. I think Sarah or Kaylee actually brought that up. I believe it's maybe both of them. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah, first.
Yeah, it was sort of in response to Kathy's comments for Allendale. So just wondering if like Allendale was going to go back and figure out what section of it that we were looking into. And then I was thinking that Thomas might have done a little looking. There was an email that went back and forth. Kaylee will have something more.
Yeah. Good. Kaylee, go ahead.
Thomas was saying before, and I think that you do have to have like a district. It's not necessarily the street, so then it does sort of encompass a bit more of the feel. So you have the houses, like it. You can sort of decide how big you want the district to be. It's not necessarily a set size, so they can be as big or as small as you want. And that way it sort of preserves, because we want the look of the street, not just necessarily the street, but like if there's old trees, sort of maybe the width of the street and like the setback and the look of the houses. I think that's the main thing, is often like the setback, like houses in the past are set back further. So if you get new houses that are just all of a sudden a lot closer to the sidewalk, it changes the whole view of the street. And I think some districts, they have it where it's mainly like the facades that they want. So it's not necessarily like entire buildings, like new buildings that go in that would have to sort of be exactly the same. It's more like the look and the feel. So from what you can see from the street is what they're more concerned about. But I think it is sort of districts that we're looking at, not just
Right.
So
And I was just going to say, I think Deb even mentioned some areas that she had some really good ideas too in that email.
Well, yeah, and it was essentially taking that same rationale that we're discussing for a residential area and identifying a similar, business streetscape that we would like to protect. And, two that immediately come to mind are Dunlop Street East between Clapperton and Mulcaster, which is still almost entirely intact with original buildings. And that corner at Bradford Street and Esser Road. But when I see the land usage map,
Yes.
my heart gets a little, I'm starting to panic. So if we're going to do that, how do we apply it and how do we reconcile it with that long-term vision of, high density and what are probably our most famous historic areas.
Sarah had her hand up. Go ahead, Sarah.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the downtown, given the map, would be the place to start for us. Like I know that the residential of Allendale is important, but the downtown might be the one that would go first in terms of development. So we already did the approval for getting a professional to start writing up the report that you would need for the same designation. Is that something that we can add this designation to that original one with the buildings? We say we want the 2 building sites and this section of the downtown. Is that something we can do today?
Thomas? Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you, Craig. So just, in my email, I just wanted to get sort of an idea of what the committee was thinking. So are we looking to protect specific streets, or are we looking to establish essentially conservation districts? I'm not entirely sure if there's any other way to get around to doing this. Like it seems like the only way would be to designate streets. Entire areas, and then the cultural heritage attribute of the area would be the streetscape, and it would have to be described as to why it has cultural heritage value under the Ontario regulation for establishing value and interest to the community. I would hesitate to say that we should be hiring a consultant to do the evaluation, and then because that would suggest that we are going to be designating entire blocks of the downtown. I think there is softer ways of doing this, because I suspect that would be met with some pushback from property owners who own property in the downtown. And this is an urban growth center. The development is to happen in this area within Simcoe County. This is the only urban growth center. So we have to, from a planning side, from the planning perspective, we have to balance accommodating the development while protecting the heritage aspects. And a designation of buildings within the downtown would essentially, in my view, would probably be going too far. So we need to find a balance. And I'm not a heritage professional. I'm not a heritage expert myself. So potentially, we'd had some students do some preliminary work back in 2019 about how to achieve this. But maybe there's some room to hiring a professional to put together some recommendations for us, and implement those over the course of time. And if there is something through the official plan we can do that right now. But I don't know if we have enough funds to be able to do that. Like that would be a pretty comprehensive exercise. That's it for me, Craig. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a few hands up. I saw Kaylee and Kathy. Jim, did you have your hand up too? So Kaylee, you go ahead, please.
I was just going to add to sort of confirm, any house within the district is automatically then designated. It's not just sort of the area. Each building in the area would be designated.
Okay, Kathy?
So understanding that this is the urban growth center, if we look at the map, and I think it's Dunlop West. So Deb is suggesting from Clapperton, Bayfield to Mulcaster, which I agree with. The other side of it it doesn't have as many buildings that are in as architecturally, important. Could we then not go back to the map and say we'd like to see the high density, or we'd like to see the density change?
I think that's definitely a fair comment, Kathy. Yes.
So because before this was high density, if I remember correctly, it was C11, which was 10, they had the ability to build up to 10 stories.
That's correct. So in the previous version of the official plan, a lot of the lands on the fringe sort of the urban growth center were high density.
Yeah.
And we pulled back a little bit because we are wanting to essentially consolidate our high density stuff into a specific area. We didn't want to have like high density here or there or throughout the urban growth center. So that's why we put the medium density there.
Right, but what we don't want, I think, as a heritage committee, is we don't want to see we want to see strong protection. Mm-hmm. And recognition of we should be doing something in terms of conservation districts. I mean, everywhere around us has conservation districts. I think, and part of even in the meeting, one of the stakeholder items is, I think I have put that on, conservation plan. And as a part of that was engaging the BIA so they could go out and talk to the member group about potentially doing a conservation district. So mm-hmm. I think, it would be, I'd like to see us get a professional involved, because I'm not an accredited heritage person, and nor is anybody else on this committee.
I was just going to say, if this is something that we're considering, we'd have to probably put it in the budget for next year, right? Because we don't have the budget for something like that right now. So that's when you look at the budget, we just don't have the room for that. Yes, Kathy.
So, but my understanding from a conversation when Michelle Banfield came to one of the meetings with Wendy Cook was that there was funding outside of our budget in the planning operation budget somewhere
That's right. I think.
to do something like this.
Sarah?
Yeah, I was going to say about that extra funding that maybe they would have it. I'm just a little worried that if we put stuff off, to next year, it gives developers the chance to sneak in. And our language right now is really not great. And I get that we have to have intensification. It's part of life, part of the world. But this is a very small block of our downtown that is worth it, like that it really has that same heritage feel. So is it possible to have a look maybe through the BIA and talk to the building owners on that block, and just maybe as a collective, we can say, we would like to designate for all of you to designate at the same time. The language in the bylaw can always be done so that it allows for a little bit of growth, but also really protects everything that is what we're interested in protecting in. But maybe reaching out to the building owners right now and seeing if they would be willing to. There's got to be a middle ground that we can protect it. It's just the official plan is so far away from us still, and there's a lot of development going on behind the scenes. It just would be a shame to put it off and then somebody sort of slips through the safety net and we have a building coming toppling down.
Tim, do you have your hand up there? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Harris.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think this is a good conversation. I think there are some areas downtown, and we need to be clear. There are some areas that aren't that historically important, and I think we were pretty balanced in our understanding of the theater block development. That section of downtown is not including buildings that are wonderfully valuable from a heritage. They're old, but they're not grand in any way, shape, or form. So we didn't get in the way. So kudos to us for that. So I think if we pick the areas that truly do anybody, not experts, because that's really what's important. If the average citizen can identify that's a nice old building, that's a pretty good test. Quite frankly, it's to really understand what heritage is doing and what it means for the average citizen is why we would want to protect that building. They can clearly see it's an old building with neat architectural features, and it's important to Barrie's history. It should be saved because all the other ones aren't worth saving. So I think that's important, that we're being targeted, focused, and clearly understanding which buildings to the average person could be identified as having heritage value and unique characteristics. So focus on those and not get too far afield. I worry a little bit with our boundaries. I grew up in the East End, and some of those we start to move that boundary from where it is up towards Wellington and such and Steele, and then you're getting into these neighborhoods. People go, "Is that heritage? I know it's 70s, 60s, 50s, but is it really heritage?" So I worry that we start to blend it so that people don't know it when they see it. They should know it when they see it. For the average person, that's when you've got a beautiful old building that we need to kind of wrap our arms around and protect. So that would be my thought as far as the streetscape piece and what to determine to really focus on and protect. Thank you.
Excellent points. Good. Does anyone else have any comments about that? Okay. I guess the last one is.
So where?
Oh, sorry. Where? Yeah. I guess where are we going to go on that? Yeah. So. Yes, Sarah, quickly.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, is it possible that we decide now to send out a letter to these people, or somehow through the contact with the business association, talk to their head and see if this is something that now we can really push? So if maybe Kathy or Shelley, you've got the contacts of those people already working, is that something that we could do through that way? I'm just afraid that like a letter is going to go into a post box and then not go anywhere.
Kaylee? Oh, sorry.
I was just thinking it might be better based on some of the interactions with the community, instead of doing letters, that there's actually sort of a meeting or some sort of presentation where people can ask questions, because I know at the church, they wondered if there was a fee to stuff, or there are some other questions where we might not think of it, so then you can answer them, and then they're fully aware of what the difference is between listing and designated properties, and then that way it's sort of not put off, and make sure that they fully understand what it is, because a lot of people just think that they can't do anything once it's designated.
Thomas?
I'm just a little confused what the committee's trying to accomplish a little bit. Are we looking at trying to convince a number of property owners to designate their property, or is the committee looking to initiate the process of potentially establishing historic neighborhoods? Because there's two different things, two different processes. And if we're looking, my understanding was designated streetscapes, which to me points to establishing districts. And there is a process under the Ontario Heritage Act for doing that. And one of the steps is to conduct a study. And it doesn't mean that we are going to pass a bylaw to implement historic neighborhoods. It just means that there is a study to be done. And the study, the scope of the study is described as examining the character and appearance of an area, including buildings, structures, and other property features to determine if the area should be preserved as a heritage conservation district. Like, that's a pretty fundamental question. It's like, should this be?
Yeah.
Another component is examine and make recommendations as to the geographic boundaries of the area to be designated. So it would require, likely consultant time to be able to go through, an area that would be defined by the committee, and then they would go through this sort of criteria, and the scope of that study would provide us with a lot of information. And I would, suggest to the committee that, if we're looking to pass a motion or provide direction, it would be that staff explore something along the lines of exploring or initiating, conducting the study under Section 40, subsection 2 of the Ontario Heritage Act. Or, we can work on the language so it's a little bit more clear, but to point us in that direction rather than going to individual property owners.
Yeah.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Thomas, for helping guide us. Quick question, because I'm for whichever method gives us more protection of the area. So if what you just described provides more certainty that we can have some protection, I would support that motion fully. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. I think so. In terms of immediate sort of protection, designating a property through an individual process would likely be faster, but you would just be doing individual properties. Whereas a study would look at a much broader area and would put us in a position to be able to pass a bylaw to establish historic districts, which would be an area that's as recommended in the study. So it's larger. It's just not as immediate. So I don't know which way it's up to the committee what you would do.
So just a quick follow-up. So I wasn't so much worried with the immediacy. I was worried about the effectiveness. Which of the methods would be more effective in giving protection for the buildings that we would identify, whether it be designating, if we could be so lucky to get them all, or this process that you've spoken about?
My understanding would be that the historic neighborhood districts or conservation districts would be a more comprehensive sort of grab and establish a higher bar of protection of our heritage character in Barrie.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you, Thomas.
Great. Thank you, Thomas. Good. Yes, Shelley. Oh,
There was a comment earlier that there was potentially some money available, not through our committee, but through the city or something. So would that money be available to pay for that study?
Chair, I can answer that question.
Yeah,
so that would be if the committee passed a motion to explore the feasibility of doing a study under Section 40 of the Ontario Heritage Act. The financial piece would be explored as well. So I would go back to our management team and say, how much money do we have for this? We would likely go and seek some ballpark like examples or sorry, I can't speak.
Yeah.
Budgets, not budgets, you know, like a quote, sorry, yeah, get a couple of quotes, and so we know where we are, and if it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe the route of individual designation is better. But if it's in the, you know, tens of thousands, it might be more feasible to do that rather than going individual.
That's awesome. I mean, that's a huge thing that we'd be doing. So I think that we'd like to do that, I think. So do we
think
have to
that's the
say
motion.
anything, pass a motion? Yeah, would anyone like to second that Thomas did that? All right, excellent, very good.
And third and fourth and fifth
Yeah,
then.
I love it. Okay, and then the last little one I think is 211 is workplace updates. Oh, sorry, did you have a question, Kaylee? Sorry. Oh,
We lost you.
sorry, Kaylee, I can't hear you. Oh. Can't hear you. Sorry, Kaylee. No.
Says yes. How about now?
Oh, there you are.
I think our internet is poor here. I was wondering if
My
the
computer
study,
keeps freezing.
yeah, same here. I wondered if the study actually happens to go through and it's being done, if it would be considered if anybody is like proposing a development in the area, or it would have to be fully like a bylaw put in place and everything before anything, like it would be considered. Like if it's going to be designated like a streetscape or whatever, and you say the facades have to look sort of in keeping with the rest, so it's got to be like a brick, at least a brick facade or whatever. Would it at least be considered, or would it not be considered until it's fully in place?
So through the chair, if I could answer that, I'm going to read right verbatim from the act. If a council of a municipality undertakes a study under section 40, which is the study I'm recommending, the council may by bylaw designate the area specified in the bylaw as a heritage conservation district study area for up to 1 year.
1 year, yeah.
And then there's some other provisions, you know, the bylaw may under section 40.1 subsection 1 may prohibit or set limitations with respect to alterations of property situated within a heritage conservation study area, erection, demolition, removal of buildings or structures, and such. So that it does give the municipality to say, we're studying this area and we don't want anything to happen. That's for a year, and that's a council's discretion.
Okay, good. Sarah, you had your hand up. Sorry.
Yeah, it was a similar question, and now I have a sub question, which is how likely is our committee to make such a bylaw? Like if we're already looking at the downtown as being intensified and all that sort of stuff, how likely are they to go ahead with it when they're also doing a different plan? You may not know.
Is that for me? I mean,
that's a
multi-million-dollar question. It's hard to say, Sarah, just because I mean, it's council. Council is what council does. Council takes a lot of matters into consideration, but yeah, I really don't know.
We have a counselor here. Maybe you can answer.
We do.
Yeah, I was trying to hide. I can't believe you
I see that.
Well, I think, yeah, we definitely, part of the charm of downtown is its history, right? It's
Yes.
uniqueness. Otherwise, you go to a strip mall or big box store. So I would suggest also downtown's got to survive, and downtowns don't survive if they don't revive themselves, and that is through people. So we need to do this well. It needs to be coordinated, and you know, I'm always interested when I see wonderful architecture that's new with wonderful architecture that's old and how cool that looks. So that's why we have to be clear on what what's really worth saving. What can we point to? That's a beautiful old building that shouldn't be gone. And here we are in Barrie. I can't see the old post office. I can't see the old city hall because we've lost these things. The old arena. I mean, so we're sitting here in a young city, because we are a young city in the big picture, with very little historical buildings that have been preserved. So we've got our historical lessons in front of us that we need to learn from. And I can't imagine council can't find a way to revitalize downtown with more residential that will take advantage of the sky, because we have to take advantage of the heights so we don't take up more ground space and take down more buildings in the process, and also keep what makes downtowns unique. And so I really don't have a lot of worry that this council, and year and a half now, it could be a very different council, but that wouldn't support keeping the best of the now and adding new stuff to make it better. I think it's manageable. I think it's doable, and I hope it happens, really. I mean, we've got to revitalize downtown or it deteriorates. I'm sure Kaylee and Sarah know better than anybody else, and things don't stay the same. Like communities are either progressing or regressing. So we need to progress. So, so that's my answer. If that helps. I don't know if that helps.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer. Kathy?
And we still have, we've got Claire and Jim who sit on the committee, Jeff, who was a part of the Historic Neighborhood Strategy, Barrie Ward, who was on this committee previously. So, Sergio is the BIA. Mm-hmm. So, I think that we would have a very good chance of getting something like this through. And from a tourism, they should be looking at it also from a tourism perspective.
Excellent.
People love to go to old historic towns, the charm of Niagara on the Lake, or in small towns in Nova Scotia, or Chinatown in Kensington Market. They're so cool. Kensington Market just bought a building. I don't know if anybody saw that. They actually knew a developer was going to take it, so they bought it, the community themselves.
Okay, does anyone else have any points about that? Okay, and I think the last part is 211, and that is work plan updates. Thomas? Sorry. Kathy?
So does Thomas have his direction at this point?
Yeah, we are.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Thomas?
I got lost in the...
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So I suggested a motion that Tammy had sort of written down, and she messaged me earlier to for me to provide her with some clarity. But it's going to speak to staff, doing the preliminary sort of research into conducting a study under Section 40, subsection 1 of the Ontario Heritage Act. And what that study, it does provide quite a bit of information. For example, it will provide recommendations on changes that will be required to the municipality's official plan and any applicable bylaws, including zoning. So if it doesn't go as far as establishing a heritage conservation district, we'll still have those recommendations, and we can pick and choose which ones to implement through the official plan and zoning. So I think it gives us quite a bit of wins. So we'll put together a motion that will enable us to do this study, or at least explore what it's going to cost us to do this study as well.
And we can still keep working away at trying to get the buildings listed or designated as well, which is great. Yep. Okay, great. So 211 work plan update.
Yes, so I wasn't the one who requested this one. I'm not entirely sure what the committee would like to know.
Tammy put it in. I was talking to her before, and she just said it's just sort of like anything that was on the work plan that maybe people were working, rather than having all the little bullets. And the only thing I was looking at was those wraps around the utility. And so I got a quote from the city. I got a quote from Shelley. And basically I also talked to our chair, and he was suggesting that, we got a lot going on right now. Maybe this is something that we can sort of work towards for next year. Just because we've got the street signs we're trying to do, we're trying to get the plaques on. And so, that's something I can still be working on. The other thing that I thought was great is Councillor Harris was mentioning that perhaps he can encourage the councillors, each of them, each ward, to do 1 or 2. That would be 10 or 20. And I was just thinking in my head, if you were in an area that has Painswick or Holly, then they could do a wrap that has, you know, something from Holly or something from Painswick that's historical. It would be great. So maybe that's something that Councillor Harris can, you know, talk with the other councillors about. I don't know. Councillor Harris. Yeah.
Yeah, happy to. I'd love to lead by example and have something to show them. Took a picture of the corner of Tiffin and Essa Bradford there the other day and sent it to Craig, and there's like 4 different utility boxes right there waiting to be wrapped with something that shows that old downtown of Allendale. So we need to get some pictures, Craig, of the old downtown, Christie's IGA, and whatever else, the Clifton Hotel, and put up a really cool memorial of the downtown that used to be there. So
yeah. And it's a gateway into the city, right? So it's
a great spot.
It's a great
That's
spot.
in the official plan.
Yeah, I think it would be beautiful. So I think that was the only thing that I think Tammy and I talked about is, and I have some quotes for the wraps, and I talked to Thomas about, you know, just the idea of who to do it, and then Claire mentioned that, you know, maybe this is something we work towards next year, but if we can get some of the councillors to do it, I think that'd be amazing. So good. Yes, Shelley.
So who would actually design them? Like, so I'm assuming Deb, or, you know, so we could get the historical photographs from the Historical Society, or, you know, to go on to the wraps, and then, you know, because it's fairly easy. It's, you know, and I know we've got a lot on there, but if you kind of, you know, theme them and get the photographs, and somebody designs it, it kind of, somebody is designing it, meaning somebody else is doing it, and we're just paying for them to install it. And so we don't really have to kind of do a little bit, maybe with even Deborah's help or something, we can decide which photographs can go where. That's probably the most difficult job, is to find the photograph. But maybe Deb, you know all about that. Maybe that's the easy part. I don't know.
Yeah, Deborah.
Easy for me.
Okay, so it may not be that difficult, because the wraps are, I don't know, like I had a quote of like 375, you know, like, so, and Craig may have others, because this was based on a specific 2 that I'd given a designer or a guy. And what he does is he actually has the vinyl, but he would design it as well. He designs it, then he prints it, then he installs it. So it's a one-stop shopping. And I'm sure Craig, I'm not trying to jump it, but, you know, that it can be an easy process. I thought the difficult thing was to find the photos and put them in the right place. So somebody has to look at them to make sense that the photos are the right ones for the boxes, like for the location, that it makes sense and it tells a story, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Deborah?
Anyway.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Sean. Sorry. Are you done, Shelley? Deborah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if the councillors decide to go forward with their challenge, you know, the Barrie Archive's happy to work with, you know, each ward to source or select images that are appropriate for that ward, and
I think it'd be awesome.
provide them to the vendor, or Shelley, or whoever's going to interface with the contractor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Councillor Harris.
Yes, thank you. So as far as I really want to move forward with the old downtown Allendale. So Deb, I'd love to work with you. I know Craig was interested to pick some photos, and we can meet one day and look at the boxes that are available as far as the canvas, because there's several, and they're wonderfully located. So I would be happy to work on that right away, and I can handle the funding part. So be happy to do that. And then we can, I'd like to show something to the counselors. Here you go. And as opposed to tell them, let's do something. We're going to do something, have it done, and we're going to show them what they can do and how they can beautify an area of their community. So that's my thought. So I'd love to work with you. Thank you. And let's get it going.
Let's get her going. Okay, Kaylee.
I was just going to say, there's also the Simcoe Archives that has a lot of historic photos, and with that you do have to pay per copy, but we got the high resolution copies of them so that we can use it for other stuff, not just the wraps. We can use it in other
Oh, Kaylee, sorry, you're cutting out. Sorry. Oh. Sorry. Oh, there it is.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I was just saying to remember about also the Simcoe archives, because they have a lot of photos there, and we get them. You can get them a digital copy, a higher resolution, so we can use them for other purposes as well. So just another source to get some other photos.
Awesome. Thank you.
But you have to pay per image. I can't remember exactly how much it was.
Good. Well, I love that Jim Harris is going to do that. I'm very excited. I'll help you with that too. That'd be great. Okay. I think the last part is just anything that referring items. I don't think there is anything. So I think we're David.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't realize there wouldn't be a place on the agenda for open air Dunlop, but I did circulate an email about potentially 7 Saturdays with each community member, each committee member from the community taking one Saturday and volunteering for one other. Is it appropriate to get any consensus on that just now?
Yeah. I'd be willing to help whenever you want. Put me in whenever. I'm fine.
Those dates are June 19th to July 31st. It just happened that those 7 Saturdays seem prime time to me, and they coincide with 7 community members on the on the committee. And if each person took the lead on one and volunteered at another, that way each 4-hour segment from 10 to 2 could be shared between 2 people, which would be much better as well.
Excellent. Very good. All right.
And I can send that out again if that's appropriate.
Great. And we can all just sign up then, maybe.
Yep. I'll try and keep track of it one way or another of who's on which days. And I know our equipment has been set up or gathered in one place. There was an email from Thomas, and I have a tent and a table if we'd like to do our own tent and table.
Excellent. Very good. Kathy, did you have something to say? Bless you. No. Okay. Excellent. Yes.
Yeah, sorry, I'm choking. Is there any chance, I'm just wondering about this weekend? Because this weekend is, I think, they are going to do an open air this weekend?
Well, the first 2 were postponed, the 5th and the 12th,
Right.
and there's an update, were postponed.
There is an update, I believe, that we are opening, like all the outdoor patios are opening. The fences are coming down at Meridian Square on Friday. So I'm not sure, this might be too soon to get anybody out, but the patios are open and the screens are coming down. So I did see that. I don't know if the BIA has gotten out yet to sort of say, we didn't get an updated note from them, but this is happening as we speak. So I just didn't know if there was anybody that might be available and might be interested if it's a go.
Let's start with the 19th. Let's give them some time.
All right.
Just rather than rush it, and then we can be ordered. And let's let David kind of organize that. There's one person, and then people can sign up. Okay. I think.
Okay.
Okay.
Just the one other thing was, I did send out an invite to the town crier. Yes. And to the Barrie Historical Archive group, and to Mary Harris Fletcher as well, to see if they were interested on any one of the dates, or if they're interested to join us at our table, just as a starting point for them. Because, and Steve Travers, the town crier, has already come back and said he's in.
Okay, great. That's awesome. That's good. So that's great, guys. I think we're not going to have a meeting in July and August, I guess that's, so I guess our next meeting will be in September, right? Is that correct? Although we are gonna meet, Shelley and myself and Kathy are gonna meet, probably we'll organize that. So thank you very much for everybody. I'm not as good as our chair, but I try my best.
You did a good job.
Thanks, guys. All right. Have a great summer.
Jim?
Bye-bye.
Well done.
Can I,
Yeah.
can I just ask Jim a question?
Sure.
Did he is he gone?
He's gone. No.
Maybe Tammy knows. Tammy,
Yes.
is council taking a break for all of July and all of August this year?
Yes, they might have one meeting in August. I'm
Right.
not sure what that's pertaining to,
Right, okay,
but pretty much most of this July and August.
right, okay. All right, thanks.
All right, goodbye, everybody. I'm
Okay,
sure we'll be
bye,
in touch by
everybody.
email, but if we don't,
Bye.
hopefully we'll see you on the streets.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good night.